The Marine Corps requires leaders of all ranks to have a deep understanding of war and the employment of force. MCDP 1 reminds Marines that the military profession is a thinking profession. Every Marine is expected to be a student of the art and science of war. It goes on to say that every Marine has an individual responsibility to study the profession of arms. Self-directed study in the art and science of war is at least equal in importance to maintaining physical condition and should receive at least equal time. The Marine Corps Association understands the critical importance of ensuring that Marines are as mentally ready for combat as they are physically ready. That is why we offer an entire page dedicated to wargaming on our website. We have recommendations for both tabletop board games as well as computer games. And for Marine Corps Association members, there is a discount code for war game design studios that you can find on the website. War games are a great way to immerse yourself in history and to put yourself in the shoes of the great leaders of history. Go beyond guided instruction and experience the thrill of wargaming. Check us out at mca-marines.org/decision-making-exercises/wargaming-2. That's mca-marines.org/decision-making-exercises/wargaming-2. Take your training to the next level.
Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Welcome to episode 206. This week, we continue our Road to 250 segment, celebrating the Marine Corps' 250th birthday in 2025. Throughout the rest of the year, we'll feature stories and history from throughout the 250 years of the Marine Corps. These episodes will be nested within the MCA's overall Road to 250 campaign, where you will find featured articles in both the Gazette and Leatherneck, highlighting events and battles within specific periods in Marine Corps history. The MCA also has a commemorative Road to 250 coin collection. These commemorative challenge coins can only be found through the MCA. Go to marineshop.net to order individual coins or email customer service at mca-marines.org to order the entire set or learn more. For August, we walk the road to 250 during the Vietnam War era with our guest and Leatherneck legend, Paul Thompson. As a young Marine Corps combat correspondent, Sergeant Paul Thompson was assigned to the staff of Leatherneck in the 1960s. He traveled throughout Vietnam telling Marines stories as he covered the war for the magazine. Paul joins us in studio to tell us what it was like recording history as it unfolded. This is episode 206.
Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Thank you for joining us and your continued support. I am Vic. I'm here with Nancy.
Hey, Vic. How you doing?
We've got two treats for you. One is our guest, who we'll introduce here shortly, but a second is we have a third guest, William Truding. Thank you so much for coming in.
He's a co-host.
I'm a co-host, Vic. It's on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, it must be true then.
But also, there's hardly. It's been a while since all three of us have been on.
I know.
Yeah, so
you feel like a guest.
Rusty. Well, I guess
Thanks,
I'm
Nancy.
always rusty regardless, but it's still good to see you. I just feel like we've welcomed you into this new space, which is
the space I work
long
in.
The tooth here.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Vic.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Howdy, y'all.
So, just a little orientation on this episode. We are, as you guys heard in the intro, this is our Road to 250, part of our Road to 250 series. In this bucket for this month, we are going to be diving into the Vietnam War. This obviously hits close to home for me, being half Vietnamese. I'm really looking forward to where this is going to take us, our experiences pre-war, during the war, post-war, as both myself and our guest has visited Vietnam since. But how's everybody doing as we're embarking on this really significant bucket here?
Yeah, I'm great, and I'm really looking forward to this because this whole podcast has a distinct Leatherneck flavor.
Very leathernecky, yeah.
Yeah, so
you can smell it.
I know. I just the excitement is in the air for me.
Yeah.
And I'm very much looking forward to introducing all of our listeners to a Leatherneck legend.
Yeah, Leatherneck legend. This is so great. How about you, William? It's been a while. How you been?
It's been a while. It's great. Working on some great projects. Not too related to the Vietnam War, but are going to be great for all of our listeners and members of the Marine Corps Association. We got
any
some
teasers for right now.
If you're a fan of the Forgotten War, which is most of them are forgotten, unless you're like World War II, like these days, like you're pretty much forgotten. But yeah. But if you're a fan of the original Forgotten War in American history, we have a lot of great content to remind you of that coming up, as well as also for all our listeners out there. Check out the Tell Your Story link on the Marine Corps Association website. Reach out to us, and then we would love to sit down, record you, and talk to you about all that you've experienced. We have some great interviews from that coming out as well. So please go ahead and fill out that form and come into our studio.
How's the homesteading coming?
Oh, well, the 9-month-year-old alarm clock has really destroyed many of my working passions. But I think over time, when this alarm clock starts to actually walk, talk, and whatnot, then homesteading will
I refer to
will
my
get a little
kids
bit better.
a lot of times as the dream killers.
Yeah, the dream killers.
And are you still shooting for 5? Is that still now that you're 9 months into it? You think 5 is still a realistic goal?
I think 3, and then maybe start looking at adopting and fostering.
Okay, hey, that's extreme. That's awesome.
How many?
He just had he has a new, well, I guess he's 9 months, so almost, he has a baby. But when we were first talking, he was like, I want to go for 5. I just want to see if that barometer.
The fun part comes when they come in the house and say, why can't I have the car tonight?
Yeah.
Or
you're there.
Yeah.
Or you got that many of them and they all go to college at about the same time.
Yes.
So
Well, I'm not advocating for college. Maybe trade school.
The voice
or
of
the Marine Corps.
experience here. Yeah. You don't. You have no idea. You have no idea what's ahead
As
of you
an
right now.
driver, I see like the absolute value of a welder. And I talk to my kids all the time about it because it's shipbuilding. It's
funny you should mention welders. My grandson went to college for 1 year and then started welding and went up in the welding profession. He's making more money now than I think I ever did when I was in the Marine Corps.
Listeners,
He's making big bucks.
Are you hearing this? Well,
not listeners. My wife specifically. Are you hearing this?
Welding,
we don't have to send her to college.
Welding is, it's a national security interest. If we don't have welders, we can't build ships. And obviously, can't build ships, can't deploy Marines, and we've got a problem right now. So,
speaking of deploying Marines, let's go ahead and introduce our guest.
Yes. All right. Great. Thank you for the. It may be in a while, but you are a true professional.
You still got it, man. You still got it.
Thank you.
It's in the DNA. Well, we are so excited to be welcoming Leatherneck legend Paul Thompson to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So, actually, Nancy, you mind teeing up and being a Leatherneck legend?
I'm a little bit giddy, so if I forget anything, jump in and remind me. And let me start by saying that I first met Paul in 2017 at the Leather. Actually, well, we met when you went on your return trip to Vietnam. So, but Paul and I got better acquainted at the Leatherneck 100-year reunion in 2017. And I'm really excited to introduce not just you guys to Paul, but our listeners to Paul. He covered all things Marine Corps, including what was going on in Vietnam from 1965 to 1968 as a Leatherneck combat correspondent. He came back to the magazine just after his retirement from the Marine Corps in the 1980s. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Matter of fact.
Wrote all kinds of phenomenal stories. And then we were lucky enough to have Paul come back to us in 2016 to write about. He did a return trip to Vietnam with military historical tours. And he wrote about his experiences and what it was like for him to go back to Vietnam and see all those places that he had seen in very different circumstances so many years ago. But
that was really a very weird trip with a couple of the other people that were on that trip. One was a colonel in the Air Force, and the two of us had been in some of the same places again and again, And that on this trip, you couldn't recognize it. They were pointed
Wow.
out to us. And one of them was the Marine Corps, where the Marine Corps was set up in Way City to begin with, when the war started, or when that battle started. And there's nothing there. It's a parking lot.
Wow.
And we went on top of the hotel that we were staying in. We could look down to see it. And it's just a big, huge parking lot with a bunch of cars sitting in it.
Wow.
And it meant so much when we were there before, because you were safe for a little bit, and it's all gone. And Way City was so destroyed in that battle. I thought it would never ever be a normal city again, but it is, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording. I had gone back. I've been back twice, or not back. I've gone twice. I was born here, and then I went with my Vietnamese family in 2001. Got back in August of 2001, and then I went with my now wife and two boys in 2017, and just to see the change in this country in that time period. So I can only imagine what it was like for you to have been.
I think the big shock was driving on a bus in Saigon. It's not Saigon anymore, but I refuse to call it the other name. And you see a lot that's selling very expensive cars, and then another lot that's selling even more expensive cars. You figure, this is a communist country? Who's buying these things?
Right.
And you think, okay, that's interesting.
Well, I know when I was there, it was really easy to get the cyclos for the bikes with the carts on the front. And that was sort of the taxi thing. And it was interesting too. The guy that we continually hired was a colonel in the South Vietnamese military. And so after he was repatriatized,
right,
what they called it. So he was 10 years, I think, in one of these repatriatism camps. Because he was a capitalist dog, the highest thing he could get was a cyclo driver. He couldn't even get a license to drive a taxi cab. So the best he could do was ride that bike for tourists around. Pretty brutal.
Wow.
So I got to talk to him, which was super interesting. Anyways, the point of that is when I went back in 2017, it was really hard to find a cyclo driver. I was like telling my family all about it. This would be so cool. We're going to sell the bike. Everything is automated.
Everybody has a motorcycle now.
A motorcycle or cars. They're all over the place. Expensive. Like communist country. It's
worth your while to try to walk across the street.
Yeah. Frogger. Yeah.
I remember you said that when you came back from your trip in 2016.
My wife Nancy was absolutely shocked. She'd never been in that kind of a country before. She'd been to Japan, but she'd never been to someplace like downtown Saigon. It's just a Vietnamese interpreter that we were working with explained it to me, that why the population is so big. He said, before the war, everybody owned land, and the poor farmers that worked the land didn't own it. They just worked. They were working for somebody else. He said, now all of the farmers know that they can make better money if they go into the city and get a job. He said, nobody's working the land now, and everybody's in the city, and that's why the place is so crowded. Which I don't know if that's all truthful, but the places, you got to be really, really careful if you want to walk across the street. Yeah. They don't care about lights.
No.
Lights are maybe a suggestion if it's red, and if nothing's in your way, that you keep going. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, so let's dive in.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sort of where all of these perspectives are coming from. So obviously, could you tell us a little bit about your path to Yellow Footprints? Like, what made you want to become a Marine?
Well, I'm a Navy brat. My father retired from the Navy as a warrant officer when I was a junior in high school. I had lived on one Navy base after another. The first one that I can really remember was Barbers Point in Hawaii, and I learned to swim.
Oh,
and when we moved back
nice.
to California, I said, "What? There's no place to swim here?" It was an absolute shock. And so when he retired, I finished high school. I got a very good job with Lockheed Missiles and Space Division in Palo Alto, California.
Yeah.
And my boss said, "We're going to promote you up in the ladder here, but I'm worried they're going to get drafted." Nobody today knows what drafting is. It's not a cold breeze on your forehead. It's being snapped up by the services. I knew that was coming. He said, "Look, why don't you go join the local Army Reserve unit, and we can give you time off from Lockheed to go to the training that you have to do." And I said, "My father's just retired from the Navy, and I'm going to go in the Army. I don't think that's going to work." And the other, the Air Force had not only been a regular service for a few years, and I didn't know anything about the Air Force. The Army was just out of the question. My father just retired from the Navy, and I did too. My father had two friends that were both Marines.
And this is post Korea time
Yeah,
frame?
after Korea, yeah. This was in I joined the Corps in September 22nd, 1961. And one of my father's friends who was a Marine says, "Listen carefully. When you get to boot camp, when they tell you to do something, you run as fast as you can and don't open your mouth and say anything." And for the first few weeks I was there, nobody even knew I was there. I just did
the
exactly
perfect
what
way.
he did,
Yeah.
and it worked. But it worked out. And the big surprise for me, I figured that the majority of the people in the platoon that I was in were sent to the infantry. And they gave me an MOS of 4312, and I said, "Well, what is that?" And the drill instructors had to go look it up, and one of them come back and said, "It's public affairs." He said, "Did you ever work for a newspaper?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, that's what you're going to be doing." And I didn't know it at the time, but for me, it was exactly the right thing to do.
Awesome.
It was extremely hard to learn to begin with, but I worked for some people that just really showed me the way. They were really very good at what they did. And one of them I met the first time I got to Okinawa was a young sergeant, and I was a PFC, and he was my boss. And eventually, he was my boss at Leatherneck magazine many, many years later when
awesome.
when all of us were staff NCOs. And then he retired. He left the Marine Corps, and he eventually went to work for the Voice of America. And when I got out of the Marine Corps working for Leatherneck magazine, one of the guys that was at the Voice stopped by to say hello to a bunch of us, and he said, "Well, Frank's working up at the Voice. Well, why don't you go up and talk to him?" I said, "Why?" He says, "We just had a guy leave." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "It's income tax time." And I said, "Yeah." He reached in his pocket and pulled out the stub they give you and handed it to me. And I said, "Oh my gosh." He says, "Oh, yes, I'll go talk to Frank." And that's what I did. I went up 2 days later, and he says, "Yeah, we'll give you a job. You're going to have to take a test to get in here." He said, "But I'm pretty sure you can pass it." And I went back and told Leatherneck, "I'm sorry, I got a wife and 3 kids, and they're offering me a lot more money than Leatherneck can pay." I said, "Leatherneck's the best job I've ever had, but I really need to go." And I did, and it turned out to work pretty well. I met the Nancy that you just met a few minutes ago. which was kind of funny. That's another long story, but we've been married now 33, 34 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
But
In this day and age, yeah.
Your Leatherneck experience prepared you well, though, for Voice of America, would you say?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
This is where you talk about how amazing Leatherneck is. This is your
well, it was. It was
Especially
an absolutely
currently,
great job. If I shouldn't even bring this up, but when I talked to the general, he asked how much I was going to make at the Voice of America, and I told him. He said, "Well, we can't afford that." And I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Because I really liked the magazine." And he said, "When are you leaving?" I said, "I gave him 2 weeks, and then I'm gone." And about 3 days before I was supposed to leave, he called me back in. He says, "We can meet that." And I said, "I've already told him I'm coming."
Yeah.
I said, I can't do that. I can't just break it off now." And he said, "Well, we can do that." And I said, "No, sir, I'm sorry. I'm not going to come back on my word."
yeah.
So I went, and it was, that's sort of, like I said, I met my wife that I still have, and she still has me, and we do pretty well. We do an awful lot of traveling because we're both retired now. We just got back from Australia a short while ago,
nice.
which was a hellacious trip. I had a lot of fun in Australia. And I remember one of my trips with the Marine Corps. I got in Australia. I remember one bar, and that's about all.
Spoken like a true Marine.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, what's funny is that sitting at the bar, they had a really nice combo, and everybody's dancing and having a good time. And the guy at the head of the combo said, "We're going to play one more. And if you something that you'd like to hear, let us know what it is, and we'll do our best." And one of the Marines back there said, "How about the theme from Sesame Street?" And he says, "Mate, you got it." And they played a jazz version of the theme from Sesame Street, and the whole place just went absolutely
awesome.
bananas for 20 minutes.
Nice.
Absolutely
Nice.
great.
Going back a little bit, so one of the interesting things to think about this time period is sort of the changes also in entry-level training. You not being an infantryman, did you have to do what we have today, Marine combat training for the non-infantry?
Oh, yes.
You did.
Oh,
How
yeah.
long was that?
Well, it depends on which time. My first duty station, joined the Marine Corps and see the world. Went to boot camp in San Diego, and then they sent me to 29 Palms, California.
Oh, good grief.
That was my first duty station. And the company that I belonged to said, "Okay, we've got a week on the rifle range, and then we got a week we're going to be out in the desert." So we were taught desert. And of course, I learned all this desert, and where did the Marine Corps send me? To Vietnam eventually. So I had to start all over again. But no, it doesn't really depend on what your MOS is. You're still going to go through the training.
Okay.
It may not be as drawn out or as much as
School infantry.
as the infantry folks.
Yeah.
But in fact, one of the ones that for Leatherneck, I went to 3rd Recon Battalion and said, "I'd like to go out with your folks," and they said, "Okay." They took me down to make sure that I knew how to fire a rifle, and which was fun. And then they took me out running to see that I was in fairly decent shape, which I was. And then a young captain that owned the outfit that I was going to go out with, he sat me down and said, "You're a staff sergeant, and you're senior to the staff sergeant who's going to lead this thing." He said, "I hate to tell you this." He said, "I have to really ask you, you're not in charge." And I said, "I don't want to be in charge. Your man is got time after time after time." I said, "I've been out a couple times with Recon, but not like this." And he's in charge. I said, "I'm not going to argue with him." I said, we're taking a guy with a dog, if everybody's gone and it's only the dog and me, I'll let the dog lead me home. So, and as it turned out, that was probably one of the roughest trips that I was on. And it's if you want to look it up in the old magazine,
I will.
you can.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into that.
Do you mind just talking a little bit about it for our listening guests?
Pardon me?
Do you mind diving into a little bit for our listening guests? Talk about that experience.
Oh, we were supposed to go out. Basically, it was a listening post. We're just listening and watching. And we got way far up on a hill. The helicopter came in, dropped us. We banged out the doors, and it took off and was gone. And like half an hour later, it started raining, and it rained and rained and rained. Day after day after day, you just stayed wet and miserable. And we saw nothing that was really worthwhile. And then we said, okay, let's get out of here. And they said, no, we can't do that. The weather's too bad. Put the helicopter in. You're going to have to drag to the nearest friendlies. And the young staff sergeant that was leading this thing said, this is going to be hard. We started down the hill, and I think the next day, the dog that we had all of a sudden went on point. Like, he just stock still. He's not moving. And the dog handler said, there's something up there. There's something up there. He doesn't do this unless it's serious. So we bet out, and we saw 4 people. 4 people were all armed. And we went in another direction, and they started following us. And then we hollered on the radio, come get us. And it's still raining like crazy. And we got in a firefight with them, and kept moving and kept moving and kept moving. Eventually, I think we found a place to stay for the night, and then the next day, the weather was a little bit better, and they said, we think we can come get you. And when they picked us up, I think I had maybe 3-4 shots left for the rifle. And they got us out of there, and nobody got hurt. The dog was fine, and we made it back. And we were already out of food. The other thing, too, is that because we got stuck up there because of the rain, we started running out of food. And the dog handler says, you don't feed him, he doesn't work. So everybody is anything that's a little bit left over gave to the dog to keep him going. He's a remarkable animal, too. He was absolutely great.
That's awesome. Just, I guess, rewind a little bit, because I'm really interested. You're coming in sort of as the, obviously Vietnam's on the horizon when you came in, but we weren't fully, we hadn't fully committed forces yet to Vietnam.
By the time I asked to go to Vietnam, it pretty much was. 3rd Marine Division was there.
So you attached then to 3rd Marine Division?
3rd Marine Division, they sent me down to 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines, and I spent probably 4 months with them.
Okay.
Going on I learned about going on patrols and whatnot. And because I also took pictures, some of my pictures were really played well, and everybody liked that.
Paul is an amazing, gifted photographer, and we have relied on some of his archival photos.
Well, that actually is kind of a funny story, too, because when I got to 29 Palms, my first duty station, and I'm going to be in this office that was run by a master sergeant who was a photographer. That was his MOS. But it was a small office, and he got all these people together, and he said, you're going to be a photographer. And I said, I think I'm supposed to do. He said, I'm running this place. You're going to be a photographer. And he put me down in the dark room for day after day after day. I'd go in there in the morning, and I'd come back when the sun was already out, coming back down. But he taught me to be a photographer. And I was already knew pretty much what to do with the camera, but the rest of the photography of the time, making prints and how to preserve film and everything. So it really helped me, and he gave me made sure that I had a photography MOS. So I had both. And then they moved me upstairs working. They said, okay, now you're going to start writing. And I started doing both. And it was the smartest thing that could have happened for me personally.
Where were you headquartered at? Was this Camp Pendleton or was this Hawaii?
When this was taking place, it was at 29 Palms.
Oh, this was still at 29 Palms.
Yeah, okay. I was there a year and a half, and somebody said, we have to send somebody to Okinawa. Do you want to go to Okinawa? And I said, sure, and nobody else wanted to go.
Interesting.
So I'm going to Okinawa, and I knew what that was. I knew where it was. And I got to Okinawa, and the first person that I met was Sergeant Frank Beardsley. And he said, get in my car, I'll take you down to where we work. And he started exactly the same way that the photographer did. He said, you're going to write 5-minute newscasts for radio. And I said, okay, that can't be hard. He said, it's not the same way as writing a newspaper.
Yeah. You
got to write in broadcast style. I said, broadcast style? He said, I'll show you. And then he just kept teaching me again and again and again. And it's the smartest thing that ever happened. And eventually, he was here at Leatherneck magazine, and I was leaving Vietnam for the I thought the last time. I was all done with my year, and they had lost somebody at the magazine, and Frank Beardsley said, well, he's useful. He's a fairly decent photographer. And as long as there's a good editor, what he writes is we can use. And I got to San Diego. I had orders to Leatherneck magazine. I was absolute shocked. Then I got there, and Frank says, hello. So there was a whole bunch of us. The MOS is small enough so that by the time you're staff NCO, you either know everybody or you know of them. You know about them.
Right.
I can't remember the name of the man that was a retired Marine that worked for you for a long while. He just died here 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Bob Bowen?
No. Bob Bowen is another one.
Bob was one of your contemporaries.
Yeah, and I worked with Bob
Bowen.
Bowen.
Are you talking about Ron Keene?
Yes.
Ron Keene,
yes.
Yeah.
And we never worked together, but we knew each other because we were in the same MOS. We had friends in common. And when he was still working, we would meet over at the Marine Corps Museum, and they sell nice beer up in the
Imagine that, a couple of Marines getting together for a beer.
Yeah, or a museum
only
that serves
one.
Beer would be, of course, the Marine Corps Museum.
Only one.
And so I think for a lot of our listeners, especially within the up and coming generations, the idea of combat correspondent, unless you served and had one attached, is a fairly nebulous concept. You see the results, but I don't think many have served alongside a combat. We had Luis Agostini on talking about Fallujah. I think that might be our most recent context. Outside of that, most people probably only know combat correspondence from Full Metal Jacket,
right?
Joker. Could you talk a little bit about what were some of your roles and responsibilities? What did they tell you? Like, were you a patrolman first, correspondent second, or correspondent first, patrol? Like, what was that relationship? Because, like you said, you clearly were sending rounds downrange.
It works really funny. Probably the best example of that is when I ended up with the wing. They sent me down to a couple squadrons, and I was taking pictures of them. Helicopters would leave, and I'm standing there with a camera, and they'd come back and tell us about everything that happened. And I said, well, this doesn't work really well. How about I go with you? It said, well, we don't have room. I said, okay. And then one afternoon, they had something going on, and the CO of and I don't remember the man's name, this is so long ago, he said, do you know how to use a machine gun? And I said, yes, sir, of course. He said, he grabbed his crew chief and he said, take him over there 10, 15, 20 minutes and tell him what he needs to do. And I went, and for the next 3-4 months, I was going with them as a gunner,
The door gunner.
and taking my camera with me, taking pictures of what we were doing, and on and on and on. And the thing that absolutely shocked me is when we quit doing this. This was like over 3-4 months that we were doing this. It was 4 of us, and we got back to our public affairs office in Da Nang, and one afternoon the boss comes out and he says, "You 4 guys line up here." And I said, "Why? What's this about? Somebody do something wrong?" And he said, "No, do what I tell you. Line up." So we all lined up, and he started reading, and I was absolutely shocked. Paul Thompson, from now on, you wear silver combat. What's it called? My mind just went blank.
It's the combat crew chief's badge, right?
The wings,
Yeah.
combat
Air crew.
air crew. Thank
There
you.
go. Nice.
That'll work. And then he
Good
said,
editor stepping in, just saying.
"And you have 3 air medals." And I said, "What? You're joking?" And he said, "No, you have 3 air medals and the wings. Congratulations." He shook my front hand, and I absolute shocked. And all of us were. And the only name out of the whole bunch that I can remember is a guy that was a photographer. His name is Ron Hathaway, and Hathaway was about 6'6", and they called him Max Gross Hathaway. He'd want to ride on the helicopter, and he said, "We don't need you in the helicopter.
Yeah.
You're way too big and way too much." He's another one of the group of us that somewhere along the line they offered him a commission. He got it, retired from the Marine Corps as a captain.
Wow.
Bless his heart. Great guy. Absolutely great
That's
guy.
unbelievable.
A lot of fun.
One of the experiences I really want to dive into, and we were talking, about Way City. You've been since. Can we dive a little bit into your experiences in Way?
Well, I was at a movie the night before everything started.
You're still in country.
Yes.
Okay.
I was in Da Nang, and I was watching the movies on the wall of a building, right? And they cut that out and said something's going on. So I went to try to find out what was happening, and then they kept talking about what was different areas were being attacked, and so what is this all about? And then I thought, okay, I need to get up north, so I flew up to the northern part near Way City, and I couldn't get in there. They were trying to get people in there, Marines, and they got some in, and they got trapped, and it was just really bad. And
were you attached to anybody at this time?
No,
or you kind of free
no.
Okay.
Again, I was with Leatherneck. I
Okay.
was not attached. Period.
Wow.
Paul,
that's
you
awesome.
told me one time that as a Leatherneck combat correspondent, when you were in country, you could basically write your own orders and go wherever you wanted
Exactly,
to go.
yeah.
They had just had
That's
Free
another
range.
story.
Space A.
But
on-
anyway,
yeah.
getting into Way City, what I did was went down and talked to the people that were flying medevac. They were going in picking up wounded, and I talked to a pilot for quite a while, and he said, "No, I'm not taking you in there." And I said, "That's where I need to get," because he said, "You're stupid." And I said, "No, I'm really trying to do my job." And I explained what it was, and he said, "Okay, listen, I'll take you, but listen carefully. I will take you in. The second that thing hits the ground, you have to get out because we're picking up wounded. I can't bring you back. If you can't change your mind, you have to get out." And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I want." That airplane helicopter, started down into the landing area. We started taking rounds, and it hit the ground. I jumped out. They threw, 3-4 people in. It was off the ground seconds later, And I'm looking around like, where am I supposed to go? And somebody's pointing at this wall. And I jumped over to a wall and sat there for a while till I figured out, okay, I can walk this way and this way. And that was my entrance to Way City.
And let me just interject here
bananas.
for a shameless plug.
Yeah.
Paul's article, one of his articles from Way, we've republished it before for any members, MCA members. You have access to it on our archives, but also we will be bringing that article back for just a teaser here. Later in the year, you'll be able to have a look at Paul's amazing pictures and read what he wrote about that.
That was shameless.
It was shameless, yeah.
It was a scary place. It really was.
Yeah, could you talk? So, I mean, like, I hate to ask you, obviously, very far removed from the time period, but as much as you can remember, could you just sort of walk the dog on with us?
Who did you link up with when you get there? What part of the city did you land
once you
in?
get oriented, what happens?
Well, to begin with, there was one small area that that the Marine Corps, the Army, and Air Force, I guess, were holding on to. And they were trying to bring in people, and they kept getting hit. The big problem with Way City is that the commanding generals down in Saigon said, that's a small one. It's not going to be a big thing. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and take care of it. And the Marine Corps on the ground, they're saying, no, it's not. It's worse. And they kept saying, clean it up or we'll replace you people with people that can get the job done. And it went on and on like that forever because they thought that another area was going to be far more important. And then Saigon got hit too, so that was more important. And Way City's not important. They had thought, if I got the numbers still correct in my silly, so long ago, they thought something like maybe 2,000 enemy soldiers were in Way City. It was something like 6,500, and these were not just people that they got out of the bush. These were hard, well-trained, well-equipped troops. And it was really one of the big problems that the Marine Corps had. Marines were absolutely great in jungle. They knew a jungle right and left. You can't fool them in a jungle. Way City was in a downtown area, and it's completely different. The Marine Corps had not fought in a city since the Marine Corps took Seoul in the Korean War. And all of a sudden, we're in a really tight city. Go past a window, and there's somebody in the building next to you shooting at you. You didn't walk past windows. You went underneath them, and you had to learn all this stuff immediately. And a lot of it was you either learned or you got hurt. And everybody had to go through that because, like I said, almost everyone was really trained for the jungle, not in a built-up area. Supposedly, and I've read this and I've heard it again and again, that officers in trucks on the way to Way City, when they could get trucks in there, were reading manuals about combat in a built-up area rather than jungle, because it's so different. It's so close. The window there is, 4 feet away from where I'm sitting?
Yeah.
Go by a window that close, and somebody's on the other side of it shooting at you. You can't see him because he's in the dark back there. You learn very quickly to move and how to protect yourself.
Yeah, and for context for our listeners, Way City historically in Vietnam was the center of power. That was the historic sort of capital city for when the Chinese were there and the Han.
It is still. It's an absolutely gorgeous city. They had major university there. The university got run over. The battle itself destroyed so much of that city. It was absolutely pathetic. And when I went back to visit Vietnam with the magazine's help, I was absolutely shocked because I had told my wife what it was going to be like, and you didn't see it. They had done such a beautiful job of putting that city back together. And anybody that wants to go to Vietnam now, I'd suggest you go see Hue City because it is gorgeous.
It was awesome.
Is.
So yeah, I guess like to William's question, like, so once you get oriented and figure out where to go, who do you just go to a CP and say, hey, I'm Paul Thompson, I'm with Leatherneck, and then they just send you out with people? Like, what was the process like?
Basically, sometimes you'd have to talk them into it.
Yeah.
You know, who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah.
You look like a Marine, are you? You a civilian press? What? That kind of happens. You go to the commanding officer and say, I'm going to be here. I'm from Leatherneck magazine. Once, I don't know if you want this information or not.
Of course I do.
Yes, we do.
This one particular unit, I won't even tell you what division or anything, but I talked to the commanding officer, and he said, okay, when you write this story, I want to see it before you turn it into the magazine. And I said, I can't do that. I get it done. I send it to my boss, and I've got 8 pages a month out of that magazine. I've got to get it in the mail. I said, if I get it finished, it's in the mail the next day immediately. And he said, well, that's not going to work because I demand that I get to read this. And I said, it's Leatherneck magazine. I'm not going to say anything bad about the unit or the people in it. And he said, you heard me. That's the way it's going to be. And I said, yes, sir. I walked out the door and never came back. Usually if I showed up, people would say, really? Oh, okay. Who you want to talk to? You know, I'm a Marine, and by then with the magazine, I'm wearing those silver wings, and so they know that I've been around for a while, and it got so that one of the stories that I absolutely love, and I tell it all of the time about being with Leatherneck magazine, is that you had orders that said you could go anywhere you wanted. I could go to Korea if I wanted, all the way to the Philippines. It didn't really matter. Whatever I was told to cover, I would go. I had a camera that broke, and the camera that they had given me some money and said, if it breaks for good, go back to Okinawa to a camera dealer that we deal with, buy new cameras, then back to Vietnam. I said, yeah, okay. So I went down to talk to them about getting on the next flight. And this guy's looking at my orders and said, I got to show these to the boss, which he did. I go inside, and this lieutenant's sitting there. He says, who are you with? And I said, excuse me, Lieutenant, what do you mean? He said, what company are you with? I said, I'm not with a company here. And he said, no, really, what unit do you belong to? And I said, I don't belong to a unit here. He said, that's impossible. I said, no, it's not, Lieutenant. He said, I'm going to ask you this question again, and I want a straight answer.
Lieutenants.
What unit did you report to when you got off the airplane? I said, I reported to no one. He said, that's impossible. I said, Lieutenant, please, if you'll look at the last page on this, on my orders, you'll understand that I'm a little bit different than the average bear. And he said, no, you'll answer my questions. And I said, please, if you need to, there's a phone number there, and we can call the phone number. He said, where's the phone? I said, Headquarters Marine Corps. And he opened the thing. He was really mad. And he's looking at it, and he said, oh, my gosh, these are signed by the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. I said, yes, sir. We know that we sometimes, it's a little confusing for us. And he picked it up, and he's just glaring at me, and he said, get a copy of these and put him on the airplane. But that happened to me, and it happened to several of the other guys from Leatherneck, because You don't belong to anybody. You're completely on your own. So you go down, you want to get an airplane to go here or go there. And it was Herb Richardson, who was one of the guys that went, he went through the same thing. And he said after this lieutenant looked at it and said, oh my gosh, that's the assistant commandant. He said, he looked at him, he said, nobody had ever signed his orders, but just the name on there got him on an airplane to where he wanted to go. So,
how long were you in Way for?
Pardon?
How long were you in Way for?
The whole battle, when it was finally done. In fact, one of the things that they finally ran in the magazine, we got to the Imperial Palace, and the Marines stopped and let the Arvin take it back. And I figured, well, I came this far. I'm going to see what this place looks like. So I followed them in. A couple other Marines did too, but we let them take the place. And I kept walking around, looking in buildings. And I walked in and said, "Oh wow, this is the throne room." And I walked up in there, and I said, "Wow, look at this." I took the camera off my neck and put it on a table, and I went back and I pulled some curtains to get some more light in there, and I put a timer on the thing, ran up, sat in the chair with my M16
Old
rifle.
Selfie.
Yeah, the
and got a
original
selfie, right? And for 50 years, the magazine would not print that picture. They just did. She did.
Who printed that picture? I did.
Finally printed that picture.
Executive editor.
And,
It was actually before when I was still
What's funny about the
deputy
picture,
editor.
though, is that it was picked up by somebody. I think maybe I got film developed, and somebody made copies of it and put it out somewhere, and it started showing up places. My daughter one day called, she's a character, called this outfit that offered the picture. And if you'd like to use that picture in your magazine, it's only $350. Or if you're going to use it in a hardcover book, depending on how many books you sell, many. And my daughter says, "Wait a minute, how can you charge for that picture? Because it's a Marine Corps photograph, and it really belongs to Leatherneck magazine." And she said, all she heard was click.
There are a variety of photos out there in that same situation. I will not name names or companies.
For a long while, my other daughter was looking to see if I had any photographs that made the big time, and she checked with the National Archives. And lo and behold, there's this picture, and they were selling it for $112, framed in a nice thing. And I would wonder, where did they ever get a copy of the negative? And my daughter said, "Well, Dad, do you want a nice framed picture of you sitting on the throne?" And I said, "Yeah." So she bought it for him for a Christmas present.
That's amazing.
And it's about this big.
That's
So
amazing.
nice framed
What were
picture.
your experiences with the Arvin? You said you went into the Imperial Palace, sort of, I guess you were in trace of that movement.
I have had, I should say, a whole lot of really good friends with Arvin. When I was with the 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines, I made a lot of patrols with them. And I ended up with an Arvin who was, he's college educated. He spoke very good English that was messed up with Marine slang. The Marine Corps made him a staff sergeant, and you better treat him like a staff sergeant or else.
Oh, interesting.
Oh yeah, he was really tight about that. I am a staff sergeant, and the Marine Corps says I am. And the two of us made a lot of trips together. And sometimes if we were near a village, he would get somebody to cook rice for us and watch them. He's about half smart.
Yeah.
Make sure. And he spoke, like I said, really good English. He spoke Vietnamese, of course, spoke Chinese, spoke Russian, and French.
Yeah.
Which is just amazing to me because I can barely speak English. So.
Says the correspondent.
Yeah.
Were you, I guess, fast forwarding a little bit, what years were your last tour? When did you finally leave Vietnam?
Well, it was really funny. My last trip for the magazine, I get back, I'm here in the States, right here on this base, as a matter of fact.
Probably near this.
And WM, that I knew quite well, said, "Hey, Paul, what do you think of your orders?" And I said, "What orders?" And she said, "You have orders to Vietnam." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, well, the way the Marine Corps looks at it, you've just spent 3 years here at Leatherneck magazine." And I said, "But I've got like 6-7 months in Vietnam." And she said, "Okay, sit down, idiot. Let me explain to you what to do." She said, "What you do is take those orders and go to Vietnam. You'll do 5 or 6 months, and then you'll have a rotation tour date that's 3 years from now. If you sit here and turn in that time, in about 6 months, then you're going to get orders for a full 3-year tour." And I said, "Okay." So my new wife, I said, goodbye, and off I went to Vietnam, and I was there again. And that turned out to be it's another funny story. I got there and immediately turned that time in. And they said, "Yeah, well, you're going to be here like 5 or 6 months, and then you go back with a new rotation tour date." And about 2 days later, the sergeant major wants to see me. So I go see the sergeant major, and he says, "What kind of a trick are you pulling here?" And I said, "Like what?" And he said, "Is this your first time in Vietnam?" And I said, "No." "Is this your first time in Vietnam?" And he says, "Yes, it is. And I like to know what kind of a trick you're pulling to get out of a whole tour here." And I said, "Well, I'm kind of tired of Vietnam." And he said, "I didn't ask you that." And I said, "Okay, do you see the silver things here that are on my shirt?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Those are combat air crew wings." "How did I get those?" "My first tour in Vietnam." I said, "I've been here 3 different times." I said, "I've been here in 66, 67, 68, and now I'm back here in 1970. I said, "Do you really want me to stay the other 3 or 4 months?" And he said, "No, I get the idea." I said, "Thank you very much, Sergeant Major," and walked out the door. He thought I was pulling some kind of a deal, not have to do a whole trip, which was true, but I already had been there enough, and that was the next time I was there was again for Leatherneck magazine. It was with my wife.
I think that we should have started a drinking game at the beginning of this episode to tell people, take a drink every time they hear Leatherneck.
Oh, really? I was going to say
magazine.
every time he got his ass chewed in someone's office. So what were your thoughts then at the fall of Saigon? Obviously, you had some close relationships with Vietnamese soldiers.
Well, the one that I really knew I've tried several times. His name is Nguyen Van Hoa, and I was never able to find him. I know he got his family out before he left, and then we broke up. I didn't see him again, and I have no idea. Nguyen Van Hoa is a little bit like Joe Smith. And I have checked several times, and I know his wife got out, and she was in Hong Kong when the whole thing started coming apart.
Yeah.
But
I guess, unfortunately, we are kind of getting a little tight on time.
Can I ask one more real
Please,
quick?
yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to rewind a little bit back because you were a combat correspondent in Hue during the Tet Offensive. And, famously speaking, if you read like a lot of history books, people say, the Tet Offensive really showed the American public that this war was unwinnable, which is weird because it was very much a tactical victory for the United States. What's your perception on that whole deal? Do you think that it was like do you think it was a misreporting? Do you think it was a tactical and strategic victory? What you were there, you were a correspondent. What are your thoughts?
Well, looking back on it, being much older and far more educated than I was at the time, we made an awful lot of mistakes to begin with. Part of them were the little short Vietnamese people. Aren't they cute? But we have to do all the big fighting. They're not short and cute. Most of them, if they were trained, were very good soldiers. The ones from North Vietnam that were trained were very good soldiers. That was one of the mistakes that we made. We'll handle this for the little guys. And then when they made some big mistakes with the people that they backed that were taking over the...
Talk about in the government?
Pardon?
Government, like politicians and government leaders? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I've got maybe 4 or 5 books now that I've read about it. And most of it, I think, is really true, is that we made some terrible, terrible mistakes. And on another thing, they think that the work that we did there kept the communists from taking over some of the other countries in that area. They might come back and try to do something there, but I don't think that would have happened. It would have been way too difficult. So.
What are your thoughts, having been back to Hue? Obviously, the rebuilding was amazing, but what are some of your thoughts of having been there during the, like you said, the Tet Offensive, the really historic battle, now being so far removed and having seen it rebuilt? Like, what are some of your thoughts on it?
Well, it's hard to tell exactly what they're doing with it. You know, how do you tell how free is a communist country? They're a lot freer than some of them. They're not like the Chinese, where Chinese stop so much, like people that wanted to keep Hong Kong much more free than like it was when the British had it. And now they've stopped everything there. Mm-hmm. The Vietnamese, so many of them are in the cities now looking for work. They're not supposed to do that, but the government, I don't think, really stops them. It's hard to tell. You'd really have to be there a long while and really do some investigating to find out.
What are some of your thoughts personally, on a personal level, about Hue and the battle?
Oh, it's so long ago now that I read the story that I wrote in an old magazine, old Leatherneck magazine, and said, you know, really? Are you kidding? Sometimes Nancy is my Nancy is absolutely shocked. She said, you never really got hurt. I said, well, I'm deaf, but you know, that, and part of that was flying a machine gun on a helicopter. Yeah. And I'm sure that didn't do it any good. I did have a doctor once ask me, he said, you were in Vietnam? And I said, yes. He said, well, didn't you have earplugs? And I said, earplugs for what? And he said, well, when you start shooting rifles and so on. I said, earplugs in a firefight? Yeah. No, it doesn't work.
Time out, guys. I got to put my ear pro in.
But the thing that I look back in now is that all of the different places that I went and all of the time that I spent in Vietnam and all of the different battles and all of the different things, the only thing that I've got is hearing aids, and I can't blame that all on Vietnam. A lot of it was absolute luck, just absolute luck. I was in firefights with people around me that got hurt. There was only one guy from Leatherneck that actually got wounded. His name's Ed Evans. He was walking, and a Marine behind him had a loaded rifle that went off and shot him in the leg.
Jeez.
And I every time I see him, I says, "It still hurt?" And he says, "Yes." No Purple Heart for being shot by your own people. So all of the guys from Leatherneck got really, really lucky. The bunch of us did. I didn't see any more combat than any of the other guys, all of them. I've got a picture here of the whole bunch. That
Oh, wow.
and one WM, she went over there, didn't follow any of the combat stuff, but she did some really neat
I've read
stories.
Yeah, I've read these in the archives. Shirley Noyes,
Shirley Noyes, and she was married to this guy.
Jim Elliott.
So,
Okay.
and I don't know what happened to them. I know the rest of them, a whole bunch of those guys are. I sadly have outlived the whole bunch of them, and
We got a bunch of you back together for that 100-year event.
yes,
And
yes.
my lasting memory from that is you all you Vietnam era Leatherneckers kind of got together at a table, and I don't remember who it was, whether it was you or Bob Bowen, but somebody wanted a photo and pulled out your phone to take a picture, and immediately all the other, very skilled combat correspondents and photographers at the table, the shit started flying. It's like, what are you doing with that? That's not a camera. Come on. And it was brilliant. They were still giving each other grief over, whatever it was.
Looking at that picture, like Frank Beardsley, I met when he was a sergeant and I was a PFC, right? And I knew him until he died. And there's a whole lot of years and a whole lot of places that we were, and the rest of them too. I met when they were sergeants, and then we all went up in rank and all did well, and they were all great people. We always had fun. I missed the whole bunch of them. So,
Well, Paul, this has been such a thank you so much for coming in and just sort of.
Oh, it's been fun.
Sharing your experiences.
Yes,
this
thank you.
is so great. And again, like, it's really, I don't know but it's really heartfelt for me. And I give you genuine thanks for sharing your experiences.
My pleasure.
And what a wonderful and such a unique perspective on the Marine Corps during this time. And
well,
I really appreciate
it sounds a little bit funny, but the Marine Corps and a whole lot of the people in the Marine Corps were really very nice to me my whole life. And the friendships that I made lasted until, for most of them now, death. Every time we got together, it was absolutely great fun. Herb Richardson and I spent time and time again at same base, but doing different jobs. Or I would be at Camp Lejeune, and he'd be at over where the air wing people are.
Cherry
and
Point.
we'd get together and go fishing, and
Herb was quite a fisherman, as I understand.
Pardon?
Herb loved fishing.
Oh yeah, he had more fishing poles than most anything. It was that and golf. So
nice.
But Herb was also a really good photographer, and the whole bunch of them were. All of them. They were really a lot
You
of
were
fun.
all very talented, and we're lucky enough to be able to republish your work from time to time.
Sure.
And we feel very honored to be able to do so.
Well, and it's also fun to sit and talk about them. Most of them, I think most of them now are all gone. I've managed to outlive the whole bunch, because I picked my ancestors very carefully.
Yeah, you did.
My grandmother finally kicked it at 97.
Wow.
And I'm looking to do that. So
Outstanding.
Yeah, well, thank you again
Yeah,
so much.
thank you for
Yes, sir.
joining
My
us.
ple-
What
my
a
pleasure.
treat.
Yeah, well,
Thank
really
you.
great. Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Litchman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.